the vaccine, because that was the other big story in the country. After many years of it is coming, finally it is here. So we saw the president today flagging off the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine being flagged off to the counties. That is the point from where it will be distributed to the sub-counties and eventually to people's arms. As they say, Jamila, there is vaccine and then there is vaccination.
Exactly. There is now getting it into people's arms, which means get the vaccines from this point, which is Nairobi, all the way to the county. They're saying they have, I think, 9 warehouses where they'll be keeping them, and there are plans to have at least in each county, in one public hospital where the vaccination exercise will happen. You need the personnel to do it. So it's something even countries, the developed countries, are grappling with across the world, because if you look at the current statistics, only about 0.74% of the world population have been fully vaccinated. 0.74%, not even 1%. And there have been over almost 300 million doses that have been given in the world right now. But if you look at, it's been 83 days since the first vaccine was given in the UK, and the first vaccine is given in Africa. Shows you that the difference there is 83 days. And I was listening to an interview by the CEO of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. You know, there's the COVAX, the COVID-19 vaccine global access, which aims to ensure that at least there's rapid and equitable access to vaccines for all. And that is what the reason why Kenya and other African countries have been able to procure these vaccines. We have the 1.02 million that we have received. It's in the first phase. We have 2 more. But then now I was listening to them, and they're talking about how difficult it is to get these vaccines, because one, apparently some of the countries, the developed countries, have accessed 800 million more doses than they need to vaccine their people. And you have instances of this organization saying, we hope that they'll donate some of these vaccines to other countries. Because
by the way, like Canada, for example, has got vaccines that can vaccinate their people 5 times over.
Exactly. And the United States, with a population of about 300 million people,
I think it's 3 times over or something.
By the end of May, they'll have enough vaccines to vaccinate all the adults in the United States by end of May. In Africa, we're not even looking at that. We just have about 10 million vaccines now. In Kenya, we're looking at maybe vaccinating, I don't know what the number is, maybe less than, 10 million by next year. So there are these discrepancies that we worry about. And of course, there's the hope that a herd immunity will save some of the countries which are unable to afford the vaccines. But that being said and done, the vaccines are here. Yes, there's a rollout plan. And not everybody is going to be vaccinated. We're looking at the frontline workers. We're looking at the security personnel. We're looking at teachers and other workers. And we're looking at even at the age dynamics. People between the ages of 18 and I think and 60 and 50 years are the ones who are going to be vaccinated. You need to be registered to be vaccinated. So there are all these dynamics to look at. But now we need to look at the positives, which is vaccines imekuja. People are going to be immunized. And don't forget, you're immunized today and you need to be immunized again in 8 weeks. I really hope that dynamics that have been set aside by the government, the rollout plan, does actually work in instances where those who need to get the vaccines get them, and then we see how the process goes.
And I think we can listen to a couple of people here. I think Archbishop Muheria was speaking a little bit earlier today, because there have been some people, expressing skepticism, and there was also a statement by the Catholic doctors basically trying to dissuade people from this. But today Archbishop Muheria essentially saying, everybody is free to take if they want, and that's a conversation I would like us to have. Let's just listen to him, and then we can have it.
In principle, we are in favor of the vaccines. In principle, we want to fight COVID, and it is licit and ethical to receive those vaccines. That is a situation.
Ningeambia hao watu wote waende polepole, musikimbilie. Hata kama mimi mzee sasa. Mimi ni mzee na nilipata corona, lakini siwezi kukimbilia hiyo vaccine. Ni heri nikufe tu natural death kuliko kwenda kutafuta ingine.
So that's a conversation, I think, that points to the kind of information flow that needs to be there. I mean, if you think about it, the government has been talking a lot about this vaccine, and so to have people who are still that skeptical or at least ambivalent, some even completely hostile. I think it shows that the messaging has not been as effective as perhaps it could have been, because this is there have been many conspiracy theories, we have to admit. If you go to the internet, for everything that tells you one nice thing about this, there will be a number of them, and you know, they've been pulling different channels on YouTube, pulling them down. There have been websites that have been brought down and that sort of thing because of those conspiracy theories. Yet here we are. I mean, that lady saying sita kimbilia na musikimbilie, that just shows that that conversation hasn't happened properly in this country.
Yes, Joe, and it is also an illustration of how complex the information flow you're talking about is when it comes to religious organizations, and specifically the Catholic Church. Very, very sensitive on vaccines, very sensitive on a lot of health issues. Remember, the Catholic Church has for a very long time held very strong views on contraception, for example. So this is not entirely unexpected that the Catholic Doctors Association in Kenya would say, hey, can you be careful about that? And then you look at that lady. This is now the base of the church, the faithful. They want to hear it not from the government, but from the church. I'll not be surprised that tomorrow, now that Bishop Muheri has spoken, that the old gracious lady will be
at ease now.
At ease and say, yeah, I'm okay with the vaccine. I think this is something that the rollout should also take care of. How are you communicating with different sectors of society? Don't judge them. Don't start imposing your will. Talk to them and explain that this works, and let the information come from the channels they trust and believe. And that's what is going to happen with the Catholic Church. A lot of the opinion that will be trusted will come from the church leaders.
And not just the Catholic Church, Linus, even generally the ordinary citizen. You know, those are the people who rely on what they hear in church, what they hear in mosques, what they hear from their community leaders, what they even hear from some of their political leaders. So this is information that must be cascaded to them in a language that they understand and in a manner that they can trust the process. Yeah. And it should also not be imposed. Don't criminalize information. Make it easy. Win people's trust that this process is important for them, it is beneficial to them, and any questions that they may have. And in this case, there's no stupid question. All questions are valid. All questions must be answered as to the best of the ability of those who are answering them, from the Ministry of Health to the health practitioners, from the government, and all the channels that are necessary to communicate this should be used. And lastly, it is also important to also understand where a majority of Kenyans are also coming from. This is a COVID matter, and not so long ago we had COVID graft that remains unresolved. So every time you talk about COVID supplies and the vaccine being one of them, and you still have some outstanding issues relating to the same COVID procurement, then there's some level of mistrust.
Yeah, just don't start making other predictions.
Yeah. So what is important is that let the government deal with this matter.
Maybe the temperature will complicate it. You can't
because of the cold storage.
No, the one that has come is easier. You can keep it in your fridge. You can keep it in your fridge at home. So
so you can walk there.
So it is important to deal with this matter with an open mind and answer as many questions as possible. When people raise questions about cost, give them answers. When people ask questions about efficacy of the vaccine, give them answers, because it is important that you answer all their questions. Otherwise, when doubt creeps in, it becomes a difficult one.
If you look at the history of Kenyans with vaccines, we're actually pretty good. Kenyans, ukisikia vaccine ya polio, people go for it. Ukisikia ya
BCG,
TB, ukienda ya
yeah.
measles, BCG, nyote mmedungwa, si ndio? Mmechanjwa. So our history of Kenyans with vaccines are actually good, but there are a lot of unknowns with this vaccines of COVID-19, probably because it took a short period of time for them to be developed. We keep hearing, I was listening to an interview and they said they worry that what if there's a new variant that comes up that this vaccine cannot deal with, or if they need to do boosters this year because they already have a shortage of vaccines, they need to do that, what they're going to do. But this was an emergency. A COVID-19 vaccine was needed. The world had not seen itself in such a situation. You hear it takes about 10 years to get a vaccine because of all the tests that need to be done. I think there's that fear among people about whether this vaccine is good enough. When you read about side effects, about what happens to people who've taken the vaccine in other countries around the world. So I think it's just in terms of what you said, communication, educate people, explain. Don't let anything be shrouded in mystery. I think for you to have a good uptake of the vaccine among people.
And people don't take any kind of medication. You don't take it because you enjoy taking it. You take it because there's a situation. So as you say, information will be the most important thing right now. And I was imagining that you know, Francis might start predicting things like people will be walking around that
early warning system
that go down
and credit to Francis,
in Kitengela.
He accurately predicted.
Yeah, that early warning system works. So I hope people will not be working with some coolers, you know, those things unaweka barafu ndani unataka kupitia hapo. And then you start saying, I was just passing, and then they gave me a doses.
Or I prayed about it.
Yep. Yeah.
Or we start hawking the vaccines.
No, me, I'm ready. The
All right.
vaccine comes, me, I'll dunga.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good place to go home, because we don't have Yvonne, by the way, who usually helps us to finish the show. But just that update that we have been giving you about the by-elections in Matungu constituency, where as of a few minutes ago, ODM's David Were was leading by 1,309. Alex Lanya of UDA had 962, and Peter Nabolindo of ANC 812. Just those numbers again: ODM candidate 1,309, UDA 962, and the ANC candidate 812. In Kabuchai, we have Majimbo Kalasinga 5,098. He is of Ford Kenya Party. Evans Kakai 2,079. That's the UDA candidate, and there are quite a number of candidates there. So that's where we end it tonight. Do have yourself a lovely weekend, and Yvonne should be back next week.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.